Hey guys, welcome to this video. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can model up a simple chair in SketchUp 3. This is going to be a perfect lesson for any beginners out there looking to get into 3D modeling. So basically what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to open up SketchUp 3 on your desktop. So what that means is there's no downloads or anything like that. You can basically run the program in your browser, which is obviously really good. And then we're going to look at the chair we're going to build, and this chair is actually an existing Ikea chair. So that means we're going to have some dimensions to work from, which is I think always a really good thing to do, especially when learning, like working from some real dimensions. So by the end of the lesson we should have a fully built chair, hopefully to the correct dimensions that we've got. We can apply some textures, and yeah, it should be a good lesson. So I hope you enjoy this. I've got some more in-depth lessons on my SKILLSHARE, which will be linked below if you want to check those out. They include like bathroom design, interior design, garden, like loads of different things. So you can check that out in your own time. That's enough talking from me. Let's get on with the lesson now, and hopefully you enjoy it. Okay guys, so the first thing you want to do is come into your browser. So I'm using Google Chrome, whatever browser you use, doesn't really matter. And oh look, it's Google's 23rd birthday. But what I'm going to do is just type in SketchUp 3. Oh, I spelled it wrong, but it's auto-corrected, so that's good. So yeah, just type in SketchUp 3 into your browser, and then it's normally the first link. Should come up with a page like this, and what this page does, it just kind of shows you, all the basic stuff of SketchUp 3. And what we want to do is click Start Modeling. Now what it will do is ask you to sign into a Trimble account, so I recommend you sign in with that. What you can do is just sign in with Google or Apple, or just create a new account with an email address. So once you do that, you should be jumped into a SketchUp landing page, and I'll show you that now. So once you set up your account, you should drop into kind of a page that looks like this. It might have some like welcome box or like a tour box, something like that. So I recommend maybe doing that if it does pop up. But because I've already got an account, you can see I've got my existing files that I've already made in the past. But what I'll do is I'll do create new, and it's creating new straight away. Normally it would ask you for what kind of template you want to use. So I've been using millimeters. But you can change that in the, it is in, which setting is it? It is in this setting here. So under general, we've got an autosave. We don't need to worry about that. But I've got mine set to millimeters. If you want to work in feet and inches, you can, but for this lesson, it's going to be in millimeters. So I recommend you do that. And also what would probably pop up when you start modeling is it's going to be this launch tool. So this is actually a very good way to get a quick idea of how things work and where things are within SketchUp 3. So I recommend having a look at that. I'll click Start Tour so you can just kind of get an idea of what it kind of shows us. So yeah, this is where you kind of save your stuff. All your tools are down here on the left-hand side. Your other info bars, what they call them, panels, they're on the right-hand side. Status bar, okay, got it. Basically, you can look through this. I recommend looking through it. But if not, just click go, and then we're ready to go. We're in our 3D space. We've got a little man here with a dinosaur shirt. That actually looks like a new person. I've never seen this guy before. Wonder what his name is. You can actually tell if you go to. Okay, let's not worry about that. But we're in our model space now. I'll show you the basics of how to move around it and stuff like that in a second. So to move around in the space, what you'll predominantly be using is your mouse. So hopefully you've got a mouse. You can obviously use this on a laptop as well. And there's actually this, if you come down here, you can select your input device, and then what that will do is just make it slightly easier to use a trackpad as opposed to a mouse. But I've always used a mouse using SketchUp, so this is kind of how I'm used to it. But yeah, so if you've got a laptop without a mouse, I'm sure you can figure it out. But what you do is basically, hopefully on screen you'll see my what I'm pressing down. So at the moment to orbit, which is actually this tool down here, I'm just clicking down on my mouse wheel. So if you click down on your mouse wheel, you can see you can orbit the camera around. And then also with the mouse wheel, if I scroll forward, I zoom in, and if I scroll backwards, I zoom out. So it's actually pretty straightforward to navigate and move around. What you can also do is if you click down your mouse and then click your first mouse button, you can pan, but because my mouse, when I do that, it changes the sensitivity, which is really annoying. I can't do that. But what I've been doing instead is pressing the shift key. So as I'm clicking my mouse, I press the shift key and I can pan. And this is actually a very useful tool that I end up using quite a lot. I remember when I first started, I was just kind of scrolling in and out, but there will come times when you kind of almost want to look around objects, so you use the pan tool to do that. And that's, yeah, just a shift key on your keyboard. So that's kind of the basics of how to move around within SketchUp 3. These are your axes. So the blue one is, what axis is that? I can't remember the names of them, but X, Y, and Z. And these are kind of all your directions. It is kind of easy to get lost in SketchUp. So anytime you do get lost, if you press this button here, which is zoom extents, it will kind of bring you back to your model, which is very useful because you can often, get lost. Say if we were kind of down here and we zoom in down here, and now we don't know where we are. If you click on this zoom extents button, it will bring us back to kind of the origin of our SketchUp model. But yeah, all the camera tools are basically down here, but we just use the shortcuts on our mouse to access them. So yeah, you've got orbit, pan, zoom. This one is zoom windows. So you can just click and zoom a window, but I never really use that. I just use a mouse. Yeah, so that's it, mouse and keyboard with the shift, zoom in, zoom out, and yeah, that's how to move around within our SketchUp model. Okay, so now I want to show you the chair that we're going to be modeling today. So I've got it opened in a new tab. It is the Ikea Jokmok, who knows. And we're going to do this chair because it's actually quite a simple chair. So it's quite a basic model to start with, although there are some kind of difficult parts, like in this part here, and also these rear legs. They're actually going to be quite a difficult shape to make, but I think we'll manage. And also the reason I've chosen this is because they've given us this really nice image to work from. So this is kind of like a technical drawing, I guess you could say. We've got all the pretty much important dimensions. We're probably going to have to guess, the dimensions of these legs, the kind of width of them. And yeah, there should be a little bit of guessing, but I think we'll get pretty close to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually import that image. So I've taken a screenshot of that image and I'm going to put it into our file. Now you can either just like follow along, watching this video, and I'll have the image on screen essentially, or you can have that chair open in a new tab, and I'll put the link down below if you need that link to open this image here. So what I'll do, I'm going to just go file, and I'm going to import from my device, and then I'm going to go to my device, and I've already got it saved out here. Click OK, and then I'm going to use it as an image instead of a texture. And then I'm just going to click down here, and then hopefully we can just click again, and our image is in. Now it doesn't matter how big this is. I'm just going to use this as reference, so I don't have to keep, switching between tabs in my browser. I'm just going to have this within the model for us to use. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it over here, give it a quick rotate, 90 degrees, and there is our image. Now you could do the same, but again, like I said, I'm going to have it on screen, so you may not need to do that. So during this lesson, I'm going to basically go through the steps I take to build things within SketchUp. Now, I know there'll be other people that will teach you differently, but this is kind of how I've learned and used SketchUp. And, I've been using SketchUp for about 10 years now, so I've got a pretty good way of working within it. And it's kind of like a quick and efficient way to work in SketchUp, as opposed to, the more traditional and actually slower way. Because when you want to model in 3D, sometimes speed and, being able to prototype things and create a 3D image quickly is actually more important than, the full technicality of it. So when you follow along, if there's any parts that I go, you know, a bit too quick for you, just pause it, rewind it, and have a look. Instead of walking you through all the tools individually, you're gonna basically learn as you go, and it should start to click and make sense. Because SketchUp is actually quite an intuitive program. Once you understand the basic tools, you should be kind of like understand how it works as a program. So yeah, just a note on that. I'm just gonna let you know, like I'm gonna go through it, and yeah, just follow along, and you should be absolutely fine. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing I want to get working on is probably the legs. I think that's going to be the best place to start. And what we'll do is we're going to take this 44 centimeter length, and we're actually going to draw a line so we can reference that line, so we know that we're like working like in the correct scale. Now, what I do normally is I actually just draw a line using the pen tool. So you can click here, it's the pen tool, and then I'm just going to click once. And yeah, you click once on your mouse, and that means the line's like started to draw, and I click again, and that will basically end the line. And down the bottom right here, we've got how long that line will be. So I want it to be 44 centimeters. I'm working in millimeters today. So that means 44 centimeters is 440 millimeters. So I'm just gonna keep it on the blue axis, which is the up axis. And to make sure it's on that axis, you can actually use the arrow keys. So if you press the arrow keys on your keyboard, you'll see it will lock either to the red, blue, or green axis. So I'm gonna press the up arrow, and it's gonna be locked onto the blue axis. And I'm just gonna type in 440 and then hit enter. So that is that length there, that 44 centimeters. So now I'm basically going to use that as a reference point when I'm building my the initial leg anyway. So first I'm going to grab the rectangle tool, or R on your keyboard. Also down here you'll see what I'm pressing on my keyboard. So if you get lost as to what I'm pressing, it should be down here for you to see. So I press R on my keyboard. I'm going to draw a rectangle from the origin, click once, and now it's kind of this similar thing to the line tool. Until I click again, it won't draw my rectangle. And I'm going to try and keep it square. So you'll see in the bottom right, these dimensions, they change as I move the my mouse about. But we want to create a square. So you can either almost kind of snap to this kind of diagonal point like there. It does kind of do that for you, SketchUp, but I like to just type in the numbers. And so I'm estimating these legs are probably about 35 mil wide. So I'm actually just going to type in 35, and you'll see in the bottom right it will come up. And then I'm going to do a comma, and then 35 again, and then hit enter. And that's created a 35 mil square on our base. And then I'm going to grab the arrow tool. And now what I want to do is push-pull that, which is this tool here, the push-pull tool, or you press P on your keyboard and it activates it. And I'm going to click once there, and then what I'm going to do is come up to the end of my line. You'll see SketchUp wants to snap to it, and that's fine, so we're going to click there. And now we have our first shape in SketchUp. So this is going to be our first leg, and what we want to do is basically you build everything as its own individual component, essentially. Like these legs on this chair, they are the same, so they are technically a component. So what we are actually going to do is make this a component. So if I click once and highlight the whole object, and then if I right click on my mouse and go to make component, and then we're just going to call this one leg front. You don't really need to add names, but you know, you might as well. Click OK, and now that is a component. So now what that means is we can't directly edit this until we go into the component, and to do that, it's just a double click, and you'll see that the other surroundings will get shaded out, essentially, meaning that you're in the component and actually directly editing the component. So we can push-pull this part now like that. So I'm going to hit escape on my keyboard. If you need to get out of anything, escape's quite good, or you can press the space bar, and that should get you back to the select arrow, or you can click select. So hopefully that works for you. So yeah, this is our first leg, and what I'm going to do now is essentially duplicate it on to the right hand side, and we've got this other measurement here. So we've got this this 40 centimeter measurement. So that's the total width of the front leg points. So in order to do that, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm basically just going to draw a 400 millimeter line, hit enter, like that, and then hit escape. And now if I press M on my keyboard, which is the move tool, I can click on the point of reference where I want to move my object from. So I want to move from this bottom right hand corner, but I also don't want to delete my existing one. So to copy, we just press Control. So I've just pressed Control on my keyboard, and now it's copied over. And then I can reference this to this point here, this end point, and just click once. So now we have our two front legs. They're 40 centimeters total width, and the total height at the moment is 44 centimeters, or 440 millimeters. But obviously there's actually another layer on top where we'll adjust that shortly. Guys, check this out. Whilst recording, I've actually just realized in my front room I have said chair. So I've actually got the chair, so I can actually look at it now. I mean, if I really wanted to, I could actually take, measure this with a tape measure. But yeah, so I've got the visual reference. I have the exact, what's it called again? The Stragden, whatever it's called. I've got the chair. So that's cool. So I'm just going to have that next to me as well, so I can look at it and see any things I missed from that visual. Awesome. Okay, so we've got our two front legs. What I want to do now is create the two rear legs. I'm actually just going to use these front legs as kind of like a placeholder again. They're going to be in position, but obviously these rear legs are actually different. So to do that, I'm going to use that measurement again, that 41 centimeters. So I'm just going to draw a line. So if I press L on my keyboard, it actually brings up the pen tool as well. So that's a good shortcut to have. So I'm going to draw from my axis, and I'm going to draw, was it 4, 1? So that means 4, 10, and that's 410 mil. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of my legs. So if I hold down Shift whilst I click, you'll see there's a little plus minus arrow here. So whilst you've selected one, hold down Shift, click again, and that will select whatever you click essentially. And then now if I click M on my keyboard to bring up the move tool, and then I'm going to grab this corner point, I'm going to move along the green axis, and then I'm going to obviously press Control because I want to make sure they're duplicated and not deleted. And yeah, we now have 4 legs ready to go. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this top section. Remember in our visuals here in this imagery, and actually in the chair next to me, yeah, the top section is telling us that it comes to 44 centimeters in height, and at the moment I've got these legs at 44 centimeters height, so that means the legs are going to have to move down a little bit, but we can work with that in a second. So for now, what I'm going to do is just draw a rectangle, so R on the keyboard again, from this leg point to this leg point, and we are going to have a surface here, and then straight away I'm going to double click it, right click, and do make group. That's similar to make component, but it's not quite a component. There's a subtle differences between components and groups, but that's good. That means we're not going to interfere with it if we're moving anything around. And then for the kind of width of that, it's probably going to be about 15 mil. So I'm just going to do P on my keyboard. That sounds funny. 15 mil. And that looks about right. Now we also know there's a slight overhang on all these edges, so I'm going to assume that's about, well, let me look at my thingy. So yeah, the overhang's about 10 mil. So if I push pull this another 10 mil. So that was me going into that group there. And then what you can do is, so I was hitting escape to get out of that. And what I can do is actually, if I use the push pull tool again now, it will automatically basically do the same function that you've just done with it. So we moved that 10 mil. So now all I need to do is just find the surface I want to move again, the 10 mil, and just double click on it. Bang, like that. It's pretty cool. Like that. So now we've got a little bit of overhang. And on the rear, I'm going to keep it flush, because that's actually going to be, again, slightly different. Right, so that's our kind of little tabletop surface moving along nicely. Next we're going to do these kind of strut bits underneath this seat area. Okay, so we've got our kind of base at the moment. Again, that 44 centimeters, we need to actually correct for that because at the moment our legs are 44 centimeters high. We need them to, obviously, the top of the seat needs to be 44 centimeters high. So what we can do is we can just move this kind of seat area down. So I'm going to grab the move tool, click the up arrow to block to the blue axis. And then what we want to do is kind of lock to the top of the leg here. And it kind of, it sometimes locks, but it also sometimes doesn't. But what we can do, if we press K on our keyboard, it will show us these kind of hidden lines, and then it will allow us to snap a bit easier to that top of that leg like that. So that's the correct height now. We can just adjust the legs as well because they're components. They are all going to work, change simultaneously, which is really cool. So I'm just going to bring that down to this bottom edge point like so. Cool. So now for these side bits, this is probably where we're going to also have a bit of guesswork in terms of how they're going to look. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a rectangle on the side of this our leg here. So I'm going to press R. And then what I'm going to do is kind of come down to about, I'm going to do it by eye initially. So probably about, let's go for there, say. And then I'm going to double click it and then make it a group. We could actually we should make that a component again. So let's call this side. That's in. And then I'm going to come into the group and then I'm going to pull it to this edge here. So that should have just locked to that edge. Yep. So I can see at the moment it's actually probably a bit too big. So I'm just going to come into the group and edit it again. Push pull to about, that looks about right, maybe a bit longer. So if you want to copy me exactly, the length I've got it as is 64 millimeters. So you can copy me if you want, if not, don't worry. And now we're going to try and put that little groove in it. There is a groove. If you can see it here, there's kind of like a little groove part. So we're just going to put that into it now. So to do that, I'd probably actually just move this out of the way. I'm going to move this out to here just for now so we can see the edge. And then what I'm going to do is just draw a rectangle on this edge. And again, it doesn't have to be like bang on accurate. We can just do it like that. And then what you can do is just push pull that face, which will actually cut into the component that we just made. And then I'm going to bring it back to where we just had it. So with the move tool, and it's on the red axis, so it's locked to the red axis, and yeah, it's back in place. So that looks a bit more realistic, looks a bit better that. So now I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to copy these over. So I'm going to move this one here and press Control, and we're going to go to this point, and obviously it's the wrong way around. So we come to these little red crosses whilst we have the move tool open, we will actually be able to rotate the component. So we're going to rotate that 180, not 180, yeah, 90 degrees. That's interesting. And then we're going to move it there, like that. Then we need one more, actually we need two more. So one more here. Let me check on my real chair. Is there one on the back as well? Yep, there's one on the back. So we need two more. So for this one, we're gonna put it here, and I'm just gonna rotate this one 90 degrees like that. And then we can just place this in the same position against the leg. So like that. So there, that's quite a cool little setup there. It's looking quite good. Probably about the right size. It might be ever so slightly narrower. So to adjust that, what you can do is you come into one of them, and if we drag from left to right, we select basically anything within the selection we make, and we can actually use the move tool to essentially kind of like stretch the parts of the object, if that makes sense. Kind of move them without having to actually manually push pull them or anything like that. And this is kind of like one of these little tricks that a lot of people don't use, and it makes stuff a little bit more difficult if you don't use this kind of stuff. So I've just selected all these bottom points, and what I'm going to do is I could just click on that, and then I can just, if I lock again to the blue axis, you can see I'm kind of like, you know, just moving up proportionately. I mean, or you could have just, to see like, the normal way would be you could have taken some off the top and then removed everything down, but this is kind of a quicker way to do it. And I think this gap might be a little bit too big, so I'm just gonna bring this down a little bit like that. See, I think that's more like it. Cool, so there are little side areas, and we're gonna move on from here. So the next thing I wanna work on is the rear legs. Now this will probably be more of a complex shape to make. I mean, it's not going to be too crazy to make, but I'll show you how I go about doing that. Also, I need to add in one more of these, and I can just quickly do that by clicking this one, moving it to this point, press Control, snap it to that point, and then if I do a quick 180, like that, and then just bring that to there, should be, bang, is that 180 degrees? Yeah, that's fine. So, what was I gonna do? Oh yeah, so the rear legs. So for the rear legs, what we need to do is create something that has this kind of lean on it. So this is where we're probably gonna, you know, have to guess a little bit as to how far that angle is. But we've got this top measurement of 90 centimeters. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle, probably from the origin, and we're going to keep it on this red axis here, so up, and we're going to just make it roughly, well no, we're going to make it 900 millimeters high, and we're going to do it by probably about, I mean, it doesn't really matter, probably like 200, so I'm just going to type 200, 900. Now that should give us enough space to actually make the leg. So I'm going to group this first off, and then what I'm going to do is actually move it over our existing leg. So we have kind of like a template that will kind of show through a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back into this rectangle, and I'm actually going to map this existing rectangle that is actually on a separate layer. So now I've got two separate faces within this rectangle, and we want it to end about, you know, so this is our top height, so we want to kind of end it, you know, about here really. That's kind of our end point that we want to get to. So that looks about right. Maybe it's slightly too much lean, so maybe just go probably more like that. It's probably a bit better. And I'm going to just erase this line. And there I'm just making sure I'm drawing on the face always, like, because you can quite easily draw a line and it's not actually on the face. Just make sure it is on the face of whatever component you're working on. And then we know the width of these legs are 35 millimeters. So what we can actually do is we can use the offset tool, which should be here, offset. And I'm actually going to just offset this line by 35 mil. Oh, that's wrong. It should be 350 mil. Oh no, it should be 35 mil. 35, 3, 5, enter. Okay, that's 35 mil. And then what I'm going to do is just continue on these lines. And you can see it goes pink when it's actually following that kind of line's profile. So we want that to happen. Then I'm going to do the same from this end point. And that basically wants to follow probably to, if you make the pink line show up by like moving your mouse about and then hold down shift, we're actually locked to that pink line, and we want to make it go through like that. So I'm going to just erase this little tabby bit, and then I'm going to get rid of these bits. And because it's kind of like a 90-degree, like the top of the chair is actually like, it's cut off at like 90 degrees. If I just draw that line there from there, with that pink, with it going pink, that means it's going to be a 90-degree angle from that line. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm just going to erase the rest of my my lines that I don't need, and I'm just going to come out of that group. So that's kind of the profile of our leg. We can see we've actually deleted a line that we didn't mean to delete. So I'm going to come into this quickly again, grab my line tool and just join this up like that. So that's the profile. Now all we need to do is just push pull it by 35mm. So if I grab my push pull tool, type in 35, hit enter, and that is kind of the shape we're after. So now we can move it back into the correct position, like so. And then we can actually delete our old leg that was underneath it. And then we're gonna copy this one across to here, like that. And then again, we can just delete that old leg. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. It's a pretty good place to be. Another thing I've noticed is that the top panel is actually cut out. You can see there it's kind of cut out for that rear part to fit. So what I'm going to do is just quickly show you how we can make that cut. So I'm going to come into that top surface level. And what I'm going to do is grab my rectangle tool. So I'll click on this corner point, and what I'm going to do is just draw a rectangle roughly where I need it to be. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'll use my push-pull tool to actually cut it to size. So I'm going to cut through this first shape. So that means you put it through to the opposite face and it will remove it. And then I can then simply just grab these sections and bring them to, you know, roughly where I want them. So it's probably about, well, that point there, that makes sense. And then we'll do the same for this side, like that. So that's one of those edges done. And I'll do the same for this side. So rectangle tool, draw like that. Push pull tool, bring this side to about there, and it's snapped to that edge, which is perfect. And then bring this side to this point here. So that's kind of how quickly you can, you know, adapt shapes and things like that. So that's, you know, if I went a bit quicker, just have a re-look at what I just said, and hopefully it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so now we can just have a quick check on our measurements to make sure we're up to date on these rear legs. So I grab my line tool, click once on the bottom and go to top, and we can see in the bottom right hand side of the screen we're at 900, which is great. So the one issue I notice is that actually the shape of this seat area is more tapered, like a kind of a triangle shape. So that's why we're getting these different dimensions. So we're getting 33 centimeters and 40 centimeters at the front. So there's a difference of 70mm between them. So that means they taper in. So we can actually adjust that quite easily. And this is going to be where you use these kind of tricks like the move tool to move edges into the correct place. So to remedy this, what I'd do is I would just draw a 330mm line just on the floor next to our model. Then what I'm going to do is actually just move it from a point to where we roughly want it to be. And then what I'm going to do is grab the midpoint of that line, and I'm going to click right on my arrow key, so that's locked it to the red axis, and I'm actually going to snap to the midpoint of this chair. So now I know this is in the middle, so I know that line is bang in the middle, and the line tip to tip is where we want our rear width to be. So what I can now do is just move this leg in like that, and then I'm going to move this leg in like that. So now you're probably thinking, oh, you've just ruined all your work, and we haven't ruined it. It just means it's we need to adjust it, essentially adjust the positioning of it. So for the first thing I'm going to change is this. So if I double click into this component, and then I'm going to use that drag tool, just by drag from left to right, and I'll select these faces here only. Then M on my keyboard, move tool, and then I'm going to lock to the red axis. And then what I'm going to do is come to this point here so it snaps like that. So that's worked perfectly. And then we'll do the same for this side. Move tool, and then snap it there like that. So you can see that's kind of looking more like a chair, which is exactly what we need. Next, I'm just going to rotate these, pinged out there, rotate these little side areas. So to do that, I'm probably going to rotate from this point here. So if you press Q on your keyboard, you actually open up a separate rotate tool instead of using those little like plus icons on the components. So we're going to use that, and then I'm going to, again, you can snap to axes with the rotate tool. Because I want to move it like this, that means it's going to be on the blue axis, and you can see the kind of protractor lays flat, and that's the way we want it. And I'm going to click once, and then I'm going to click on this second point here. So that means it's now rotating along that line. And what I want to try and do is snap to roughly this point here, like that. So that's worked well. And then what I'm going to do is do the exact same for this one on the opposite side. So Q on my keyboard, make sure I'm on the blue axis, and then what's happening there? Q on my keyboard, blue axis, and then I'm going to roll it into there like that. Now it looks like we actually need to make some adjustments to these parts. So what I can do is, unfortunately now there are components. So that means when we adjust one, we adjust them all. But what I can do is actually, if I right click on this one and go to make unique, that will make it no longer a component. And then I can come into the group, use the push pull tool. I'm going to push pull to that edge there. And I can do the same for this edge here. Push pull, lock to this edge like that. Cool. So that has kind of remedied that problem, and we've got that taper. So we need to rotate these components again. So to do that, I'm going to do Q, locked onto blue axis, snap to that edge, and then we're going to go to about there. And then we're going to do the exact same thing for this side. Q, snap to that edge, click on this endpoint, and then we're going to come into about that. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but yeah, that looks pretty good. That's definitely changed the look of the chair and made it more, well, more accurate, I think. I'm just going to delete these lines because we don't need them at the moment. Cool. So next we're going to apply these components, which are a bit fiddly to do, and then we'll apply some textures and move from there. Okay, so to create these sections here, so that's these kind of like strut bits where your back would be rested. What I'm going to do is actually take this measurement between these two legs. So that measurement is 260. So what I'm going to do is just draw a line on the floor that is 260 mil. Hit enter. Now, to create this back piece, we're going to kind of have to estimate roughly how high we want it. So what I'll do is just draw a rectangle. I'll do something, we're going to snap to that endpoint so we know at least it's 260 long. And then I'm going to just come to about here. So now I'm going to double click that, make that component, call it rear strut, like that. And now it's just going to be a question of getting something as close to that shape as we can. What I also like to do is, instead of trying to copy the symmetry across, what I'll actually do is I'll cut this in half. So I'll cut this in half, and then once I come up with the a shape I'm happy with, I'll be able to then mirror it and scale it, and then we'll attach them back together, which is actually kind of an easy way of doing things. So let me just bring this to where we kind of want it. So if I put it here, and then if I rotate, I'm going to rotate on the red axis. Okay, so we can see already that's probably a bit too high, so I'm just going to come to the group and grab this line, move tool. I'm going to move it along, I guess it is along the green axis, isn't it? Yeah, the green axis to probably something like that, a bit slimmer. That looks about right, and we kind of want to create this kind of gentle curve shape, which is actually quite tricky, but I think we'll be able to do it with the arc tool. So let's go for, I mean, we could maybe use, we could have a go on the freehand. I mean, the freehand, let's just have a go and see what happens. It's not, that's the problem with the freehand. It doesn't smooth out your shape too well, you know. So I'm just gonna undo that. Let's not do that. Let's use the 2-point arc. It's quite a good one. And basically, what does it do? It kind of, let's have a look at the reference again. So it kind of curves up and then goes flat and then curves back down. So we can kind of replicate that. So we basically just want it to curve up on this side. So if I go here to about there, if I bring it down, like say, it's quite a subtle curve, so something like that. Then if I delete these two lines, push pull this, now let's see the width. They're not the full width of the legs, so be about there. And then I'll just move this back a little bit so it's kind of in the middle. You can have a look at that, and then what I'm going to do is obviously duplicate this. So press Control on my keyboard, and then here's where I'm going to have to, I mean, you could just rotate this, and actually, yeah, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to rotate it 180 degrees like that, and then we put them back together, and that will kind of give us an idea if that's the shape we're, you know, I think that is kind of, that is pretty close. Maybe it's just a bit more subtle. Maybe this edge is slightly more subtle. So maybe if I come into my component, if I could just move this edge to the right a bit more, then maybe what I'll do is try and put a little curve just in here, just to take the sharpness off it, like that. Oh, so you see what I did there? I just added a real slim curve. And then I can just push pull to cut this part away like that. And hopefully that's a bit more like we want. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Now these are two separate things, and we got this kind of like nasty seam line between them. So what I'd do here is I'd actually explode, which is essentially ungrouping it. And we're gonna undo that for both of them. And now they're sitting here free in their own little space, and they're actually touching, so we can just delete this line, and hopefully, yeah, so it's kept it all together. We'll delete that line, could delete this line, don't really need it. And then I'm gonna triple click to select all those faces, and then I'm gonna make that component again. And then we're gonna call that rear strut again. Oh yeah, it's already got one, so we call it rear strut 2. Sweet. So that's where we're at the moment. That's looking good. So now we need to duplicate that. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring this one down to probably that lowest point. Oh, wrong button. Didn't mean to do that. Okay, let's move this down a little bit. That's probably about, let's have a look. It's probably about, say there, the first one. And then now I'm going to copy with the Control on my keyboard, and hopefully I can snap to this pink edge here. So that snap to that pink edge was actually really useful. So that means it's going to be parallel to this edge, which is what we want. And now to lock onto that, I've just pressed Shift on my keyboard, so I'm actually locked onto that pink edge, which is really cool. So we're probably going to want one about there. And now, once I've clicked that, if I press the star key on my keyboard and then 2, that is essentially times. That's a times number, so that's times 2. So now if I hit enter, you'll see it's made another one, and that's going to be the same distance apart as how I set the first one, if that makes sense. So that's looking pretty good, really. I think maybe just move it down a touch. This guy's in the way. We can actually delete this guy, to be honest. We don't need him, really. But we can just move these down ever so slightly. So if I move them, try and lock onto that axis again. I guess it doesn't really matter, actually. We can just go... about there. That looks a bit better. Cool, so that is looking pretty good. I'm going to just delete this. That is looking basically like our chair. So next I'll show you how to add a few textures, and I'll have a play. There's actually a rounded corner that I'd like to add here as well, and I might adjust these slightly so they're a bit tighter. We'll do that in a sec. So I wanted to add that kind of radius on these edge points, because if we look in our photos, we can see there is actually a radius here. So to add that, there's a few ways you could do it, but I'd probably do it like this. So I'm going to come into my part, I'm going to grab my pen tool. And what I'd probably do is actually just draw a rectangle from the end point and just make a note of how big it is. So, and this will be a point from where we draw our circle from. So 25 sounds about right. So I'm just going to do 25, 25, hit enter. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on this opposite corner. So I'm going to do 25, 25, hit enter. And then what I can do is actually just grab, well, first I'm just going to erase these little tabby bits because I don't need them. Just going to do the same here. And then I'm going to grab the circle tool. So that should be under here, under the rectangle tool, circle tool, or you can press C on your keyboard. That should go to the circle tool. And then I'm just going to basically reference this point, and then I'm going to go to probably this end point. You see, because it's kind of, because our angle is now tight, it's actually not a full radius. So instead of using the circle, I will use the curve. So I'll go from this point to this point, and I'll probably get to about, so we're going to make sure it's on face, and then we're going to do, so it's going to have a, let's say an 8mm bulge. So you saw in the bottom right hand corner it came up with the amount of bulge we want. So let's do that, sorry, no, that one to that one, and then we'll do the same, an 8mm bulge here. And then what I can do is just push pull these faces out of the way. Double click there because I've already done that move once. It will remember what move you made. Can delete these. Can I delete these lines? No, I can't delete these lines, so let's leave them there. And then I think I just wanted to move this edge in a little bit because I think it's a bit sticking out a bit much. So come into the group, grab my move tool, and I'm just going to move it on the red axis, probably, yeah, about 5mm. That works. Do the same here. So at the moment I'm just tidying up our model, making it look a bit better. So I want it to be 5mm. Boom. That's a bit cleaner, bit more realistic. Oh. Cool. So that is essentially our chair, and you know, you saw how I made that and the adjustments I made. But now I'm just going to add some materials, and we can do that if we come to this section here. Now we can just color in our chair, you know, blue. We can just click on each individual part and it will color our chair in. Which is pretty cool. So we can have a blue chair, or you can go into the library. So this is going to be the SketchUp materials library. It's not the best library, to be honest. What I normally end up doing in like the full version of SketchUp is creating my own textures. So you could actually import an image like we did before for this initial image, except if you select that texture option instead of the image option, and that means you can then have that as a texture. So at the moment we're limited to the textures within our model, but if we come down to wood, we can see there are some wood options, but the textures in SketchUp aren't the best, so but we can just have a play. So I'm going to apply the wood texture. Alternatively, you know, I could select this whole chair and just, you know, go click on this one, click on this one, see which kind of color I like. But like I said, the textures aren't the best in SketchUp. So actually, I might actually just keep mine colored. So I'm just probably going to do a nice, don't know, a nice. That's kind of a nice color, isn't it? Like a teal, maybe a green. No, that's ugly. This is quite nice, teal color, dark teal. So there we go. And what you can do is you can draw a little platform for your chair to sit on. Draw a rectangle like that, and then we can group that. We can actually hide this big image now. Well, I guess we can move it. We could just bring it to here. Let's scale it down. That's the S key on your keyboard, which is again a very useful tool. If you ever want to scale anything, that's actually very useful. So say we wanted to make this a bit bigger, you could scale it up. That's actually a very cool little tip. The scale tool is very good to use. So we can apply like a wooden floor, like that. Maybe this one actually. Oh no, it's a bit ugly. You can just have a play in the texture library. There's like loads of textures to play with. Do a stone floor. And that's quite cool, isn't it? Granite. Oh. Okay, that's not very good. So I'm just gonna leave it on this this one. And then what we can do to finish is we can also just turn on shadows. It just gives a cool effect. So I'll show you if we go to here and just type in shadows, we can just toggle our shadows on, which is pretty cool. Another cool little thing that you can do to make your visuals look better. But yeah, that's basically the build. That is the chair. So we've gone from you know, this imagery online. This is the chair we wanted to build, and we've had these dimensions, and now we can see that we've actually built that chair. And we can, you know, you can test your dimensions. We can just make sure they're correct. So we can actually use there is actually a dimension tool, this one here. So if we wanted to draw our dimensions on, we can click once, click twice, and then you can again put them on whatever axis you want. So we can see that's 330. Our top to bottom should still be 900 if we've done it correctly. Yep. And our front section should be, I mean, this is about 41, but now we've added that edge, it's probably not. So, but we can see that this is 400 mil, which is bang on. This height should be exactly bang on as well. 440, yeah. So you can see we have created our chair, and we've oh, that measurement's gone a bit weird because tell you why it's done that. That is because it wasn't locked to an axis. So I got that, boom, 900. So yeah, I hope that helped you. Yeah, that's kind of the chair. We've done it. We've created it, and we've completed it. Yeah. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed that lesson. We made it to the end, and our measurements are looking, you know, pretty bang on. I'm happy with how it's turned out. It does look like the chair next to me that I can see, which is a good thing. So yeah, this means that we've got a fully working chair. I've showed you some of the basic skills within SketchUp. So these are the push-pull tools, the copying, the movements. So hopefully that will get you on your way in 3D modeling. So yeah, in this lesson I covered most of the basic skills, but if you wanted to learn more and some more in-depth lessons to do with interior design, anything kind of SketchUp related, I do have lessons on my SKILLSHARE page, and at the moment you get a 30-day free trial if you use my link below. So if you want to check out my other videos on there, they're pretty good. I'm pretty proud of them. They're a bit longer and a bit more detailed, and it will really get you moving further with your 3D modeling. So yeah, be sure to check them out if you'd like to. Apart from that, that's all from me. I hope you like this video as well. Let me know what you thought in the comments. You know, I'm hopefully going to start creating some more of these videos. I think they're kind of useful for people, and yeah, let me know what you think. If there's anything particularly you want me to build. Like I said, I've done quite a few things on my Skillshare page, including like an office, which I think is really cool. And I've done garden design, which are pretty cool, and I'll probably show them on screen at some point. But yeah, that's been all from me. I hope you have a good day wherever you are, and I'll see you soon.